Shalom, this is Rabbi Andrew Bloom of Congregation Avad Shalom here in Fort Worth, Texas, coming to you with another Congregant Corner. It's great to have a congregant, a friend, Major retired,
Yes.
Dr. Barry Schneider here with us today, especially as we're going to talk a little bit about Passover and our own experiences in the military and different places overseas and what the meaning is. So thank you very much for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And it's interesting. I was with the coronavirus right now and thinking about Passover, the 9th and the 10th plagues, which come from the Parshat Bo, 10th and 11th chapter of Exodus, take on a whole new meaning. You know, the 9th plague, which is the plague of darkness, can almost be comparable to how we've been separated from loved ones. And we haven't been able to reach out and support them, just like the Egyptians weren't able to reach out and support each other. That's why it was so terrifying. And the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn, in Egypt, it's almost like we're losing people here as well. But I have to say, the children of Israel, they prepared to leave Egypt, and then they left Egypt. They crossed the Red Sea. I feel like right now, with all the vaccines that we're having, it's like we're preparing to cross the Red Sea, and that we'll soon cross the Red Sea to freedom. So really this year, it's almost incredible what we're going to. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your own crossing of the Red Sea, your own Seders, while you were in the military. So first of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did in the military, so people who may not know you get a little sense of that. And I also have to say, you just finished, correct? The national commander of the Jewish war veterans as well. So you not only served once, you served again. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I think it was interesting. I did a lot of things in the Air Force. I was a missile launch officer on both Titan and Minuteman.
So if there was, God forbid, a nuclear war, you were the person in charge?
I was the guy with the keys.
Oh, God.
That's scary, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You know, they did trust me with it. I also was a squadron commander for a number of years in administrative type squadrons, stationed in Iceland and in Turkey and in Morocco. Now, Morocco was a little different. I was stationed at the embassy. We had no military contingent in Morocco, but I was over there during the Iranian Hostage Crisis, for which I am actually grateful, because I was supposed to be in Tehran, and the coup was 60 days before my reporting date, so I would have probably been a hostage. So I was very happy to be in Morocco instead.
So you already had a freedom from slavery even before you actually got there. I would say God was looking down over your shoulder at that time.
Well, and much appreciated. It would have been a very different scenario for the rest of my life had that change not occurred. But Morocco was extremely interesting. There's a very vibrant Jewish community in Morocco. Well, been there forever. And just as far as the relationship between the United States and Morocco, Morocco is the oldest and longest continuous diplomatic relations with any country that we've ever had. George Washington established that diplomatic relationship with the Sultan during President Washington's term. So was a good relationship with the United States as well.
There's also a good relationship between the Jewish community and the king there, and unofficially as well between Morocco and the state of Israel, even when they didn't have relations.
Very much so. The Jews in Morocco have always been well respected, and during World War II protected by the king. And yes, Morocco played some very, very significant roles in negotiating things between Israel and the other Arab countries. So it was a solid relationship. There are beautiful, beautiful synagogues in Morocco, in Fez, in Marrakesh, in Tangier, in Rabat, and lots of kosher butcher shops, which reminded me of the butcher shops I grew up with. Not exactly where you'd want to buy your meat today.
They weren't talking in Yiddish.
They were talking in Ladino.
Oh, okay.
Which I didn't understand much of. Well, I didn't understand hardly any of it. My Yiddish, which is not good,
was
much better than my Ladino.
Now, I have to ask you something, because you mentioned it before. This past week, Dallas is not far from here. It feels like another world driving there and driving back, but we went to buy Passover food, some things that we couldn't get here. I understand that you had to go a little farther when you were in Morocco to get some Passover food.
We did. Now, there were some things available in Morocco, but we ended up having to go to Gibraltar to get most of our Passover food. Now, it's not as easy as it sounds just crossing the straits and going into Gibraltar, because the border is closed. So you have to go from Morocco into Spain, and then you had to go drive around to the entrance to Gibraltar. So it was kind of an ordeal, but it gave us an opportunity to visit Gibraltar, which was very interesting, and we were able to find everything that we needed. And I might add that their shmora matzah, which is always wonderful, was about a quarter of an inch thick. It really was like cardboard. And all of the matzah was shmora. You couldn't get Yehuda or Manischewitz or any of that.
Now, I have to say, this is dedication. You're going from Morocco to Gibraltar to get matzah. Now, I've heard of being a committed Jew, but that is truly going above and beyond in order to celebrate Passover. Let me tell you a little bit about one of my interesting Passovers, and then I want to hear how you did it in uniform with others. And I know you were with Dolores, Zichrono Livracha, your wife at the time. May her memory be a blessing. What a wonderful woman. So I just want to say, it's, she may not be here with us in this interview, but she is definitely here with us. So when I was in the Israeli army, I was in Lebanon during Passover, and we're sitting at the table, and in an artillery unit up on a base, Tel Srefim near Marjayun, and all of a sudden we have incoming rockets. So we have to run from the table to our battery positions, do whatever has to be done, and we come back afterwards and we finish the Seder, and saying next year in Jerusalem, really when you're in Lebanon, took on a different meaning.
It does.
So how does a Seder that you may have done in the military take on that sort of meaning towards the future?
Well, first of all, we had nothing quite as exciting as that.
Thank God.
Thank God, for which we are all very grateful, because even though it was during the Cold War and during the Iranian Hostage Crisis over there were not a lot of Jews at the embassy. There were 4 that were assigned to the embassy, but there were a lot of Jews who worked in the embassy in various positions. And we did go to Seder second night one year with the local community, and it was very different.
In what way?
Well, I was going to tell you.
Yeah, thank you.
First of all, it was very, very traditional, all in Hebrew. Interestingly, when you tell the story at night, it started late. So we didn't get started till about 10 o'clock at night.
That's actually going to happen this year, because the first Seder, which only happens about 12% of the time, is on Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night.
Yes, so you got to wait.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was like 10 o'clock when people started coming over, and you have a little hors d'oeuvres and a little Schlivovitz, and, kind of to make things start to flow. The service was entirely in Hebrew, with some of the songs in Ladino, which is the Sephardic equivalent of Yiddish, I guess. Right. And we didn't get through till like 4 in the morning. And there was no question about the 4 glasses of wine. That was an absolute minimum.
Times how many?
Times a lot. So I'm glad that we were pretty much walking distance to home, because I'm not sure I could have driven. Now, the kids were young at that point. My daughter was just 13 and had been bat mitzvahed over there, and My son Eric, who you know well, is 2 years younger. And they had kind of like no clue because it was very different from the seders that we held.
Right.
But it was delightful because the sense of community, the sense of gathering, which you alluded to with the COVID that we're not doing right now, made it very, very special. And they were very, very welcoming to us. We were the only Americans at the Seder. And it was just delightful. And it ended up that after Passover, pretty much every Shabbos I'd go over to one of their houses. And while this friend of mine did not speak very much English, and I speak very little French, after the third scotch, the conversation was fine.
You know, they say all Jews are one. We come together to support each other. Kol Yisrael, Arvim Zeh Lezeh. All Israel is one for the other, comes to support. So it's really that way. And if Judaism can be found in four corners of the universe, just like we wear the tzitzit has the four corners and it comes together, this is really a story of coming together. Coming together, one as an American soldier with those in Morocco, one coming together with American soldier with other soldiers wherever they come from, and then coming together with the local communities. I think, if we were to wrap up, I would say that that's something that we can learn here today as well. We've become so divided, we don't reach out one to the other. So what would your message be, a message of freedom, as a congregant here, as someone who has served, someone who has some wisdom? What would you tell, if you could tell our audience, our viewers, one thing, both those who are Jewish or non-Jewish, what is it that you've learned?
Well, what I've learned is that no matter where you are, people are people. And every place that I've been, whether it was Morocco or Turkey or Iceland or here in the States, parents want the same thing for their kids, regardless of their religious background, regardless of their ethnicity. They want security, they want a good job, and they want their kids to have a better life than they did. And by reaching out to each other and by trying to understand one another and understanding that customs are not as different as we make them out to be, that we are, as humanity, one people, and that we need to be respectful, we need to reach out, we need to understand each other in a way that brings us together. And as you alluded to earlier, the COVID has really tended to divide us and separate us. And it's my prayer, my wish, that as we continue to get vaccinated and we get through this pandemic, that we can start to heal as a country, as a world, and start to come back together and start moving life forward.
I'll say amen to that. And I'll just say, someone asked Hillel, what is all of Judaism standing on one foot? He said, all of Judaism is love thy neighbor as thy love thyself. Everything else is commentary. Go and study the commentary. I think we all need to study the commentary, and I thank you for giving me your commentary. This is Rabbi Andrew Bloom and Dr. Barry Schneider from Congregation Avat Shalom, and we say Shalom.